and soil ecosystem, and a more diverse agricultural practice. Complementing SRI with intercropping will be discussed in this webinar, where intercropping is an art of growing diverse crops together with, when combined with SRI, will offer additional optimization of resources through enhancement of nutrient cycling, pest control, and overall resilience. These combined strategies are central to the development of resilient farming system supportive to food security and environmental sustainability in the face of the dual challenges of climate change and population growth. With us here, we have two speakers. The first speaker is Tavseef Mairaj Shah, who is from Hamburg University of Technology, Germany, and who will talk on iRice, intercropping beans with rice under SRI as an innovative agroecological approach. Tavseef, by a quick way of introduction, obtained his PhD from Hamburg University of Technology in 2020 on agricultural interventions in rice cultivation, food security, and sustainable rural development in South Asia. Tavseef is a founder of CinSOIL, which is pronounced as CinSOIL, is CinSOIL, and is a Cliff Grad Fellow in 2016 and a Hamburg State Scholarship for Doctoral Research Fellow in 2017 to 2020. And he has the Exist Startup Grant with the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action in the 2023-2024. So quickly, the second speaker is Francesco. And Francesco will give a talk on compatibility between conservation, agriculture, and SRI. And by a quick way of introduction, Francesco is an agricultural development specialist, and he is currently employed as the director of SRI 2030 and the Downforce Trust in Dakar. And he's responsible for engaging West African governments to advance rice-related national goals and NDC climate commitments. These are the little things I will say about the profiles of these two speakers. We can know more about them in the different respective websites. So this webinar is going to be in two sessions. The first session is going to be a 30-minute webinar, which will be first taken by Tavseef. And after that, we will take that one of Francesco. Then we'll go into the discussions and the question and answer session. So quickly, I would like to make Tavseef to take over for the first presentation. So Tavseef, you have the floor.
Thank you, Aisha, for the wonderful introduction, kind words, and it's a pleasure to be here at the SRI Global Research Network webinar, to have this opportunity to give a webinar about my doctoral research. I think you summarized it really well in the introduction, the problems that we are tackling, or the problems that we aimed to tackle with by experimenting with intercropping and so yeah, so my professor likes to call it iRice, like intercropped rice. That's why in his honor I keep on writing iRice as intercropped rice, but technically it is SRI with intercrop beans. So I will just straight away start. Basically, I'm an environmental process engineer from by training. I did my bachelor's in engineering and master's as well. And at master's level, then I did my master thesis, the dissertation in the field of research, wastewater treatment. And then it was a realization that of course, agriculture is a major contributor or a consumer of water resources, and a significant amount of pollution can be traced back to agriculture. So there was this focus shift, and I wanted to do my doctoral research in the field of agriculture. And the place where I come from, Kashmir, we say that agriculture without water is like children without grandparents. So the importance of water in agriculture, or generally for the human civilization, was very evident right from the beginning. So that's why I started with SRI, and then we, after like thinking about it, we thought, what could we contribute towards the further development or further spread of SRI, and we came up with this idea of intercropping, and that's what I want to quickly go through in this 30 minutes. Yeah, so as Aisha already mentioned, we have big sustainability challenges that are facing us all around the world. Water scarcity, you have food insecurity and lack of food sovereignty, and in addition to that, agricultural practices significantly contributing to soil degradation, water contamination, and also greenhouse gas emissions. But agroecological interventions have been found to ameliorate some of these negative effects, in that they reduce the negative environmental effects of agriculture activity. They improve the yield quality as well as quantity, and focused on rice cultivation. SRI is one of the most significant agroecological bundle of practices that has proven to be successful in many case studies in different continents. So the specific research questions that I aimed to answer with my research in this regard was whether the water-saving method of rice farming, that is SRI, can be in and how far can it be a way to conserve water resources in rice cultivation, and furthermore, can innovations like intercropping further improve the performance of SRI? Because from the agriculture landscape, in my place where I come from, intercropping is a pretty common practice, but used mostly in dryland crops like maize, corn, or wheat, or oil seeds. But intercropping with rice has never been heard of in the modern agricultural history, and it was also something that farmers were surprised with. So we started with pot experiments at the greenhouse level at the university in 2016 and 17, and then finally we did some feasibility study for the field experiments in 2018, and finally did field experiments for intercropping under SRI in 2019 and 2020. The parameters which we measured in greenhouse experiments as well as field experiments are the typical parameters that are measured in agronomic studies. Some of the chemical parameters were not possible to be measured in the field experiments, but they were duly measured in the greenhouse experiments, while as there were other parameters like rice grain yield or wheat density, etc., which were more closely observed in the field experiments as compared to the greenhouse experiments. We will come to know about the details in the following slides. So the greenhouse gas experiments briefly showed typical improvements in the different characteristics, nutrient uptake, for example, in SRI as compared to the conventional flooded rice cultivation, but also showed improvements with intercropping, as we can see in the graph. And then at the greenhouse level, we tried intercropping in a couple of combinations. For example, we did intercropping at 9 days after transplantation. We did intercropping at 35 days after transplantation, and we did strip intercropping. And from the greenhouse experiments, it was the strip intercropping that was better performing than the other constellations. Same with other nutrient uptake with phosphorus and potassium. You had a better or at least a similar uptake in case of SRI intercropping as compared to the SRI and flooded rice cultivation. Chlorophyll content was significantly improved in intercropped rice as compared to the flooded and SRI, as we can see here in the chart. And when it came to the number of tillers in these greenhouse experiments, there was a significant increase over time of the number of tillers with intercropped in the intercropped plots as compared to SRI and flooded rice. Similar trends were observed with plant height and panicle characteristics. The panicle length, average panicle length, was observed to be better in case of intercropped SRI with intercropping done at 35 days, whereas spikelets per panicle was observed to be more or highest in case of intercropped rice with intercropping done at 9 days. Similar trends were observed for the 1,000 grain weight at the field at the greenhouse experiments, and as a result, we chose to do the intercropping treatment with intercropping done at 9 days was finally chosen to be implemented at the field level after a few rounds of experimentation at the greenhouse level. So on to the field experiments. Field experiments were conducted in the Kashmir region of India with initial pre-trial experiments conducted also in northern Kashmir, and then finally in southern Kashmir we did the actual field experiments in 2019 and 2020. The rice cultivation in this region is done in plains, and the fields are irrigated. It's not rain fed, so it's a proper irrigation system with canals and rivers. So I find that important to mention because there's always this question whether it was a rain-fed cultivation or the irrigated cultivation. In the region around that time, it was also a widely reported problem that there was water scarcity in some regions, and that also contributed to the local agricultural university being receptive of the idea to conduct these experiments together with them. So yeah, the process briefly, the conventional process is well known. Specifically in our region, there are nursery preparation, and then transplantation is done in flooded fields, and that's how the process goes. But in case of iRice, how we proceeded was normal, like germination of the seeds, and then doing the nursery on a raised bed, and then transplanting seedlings at the 2-leaf stage individually, and not under flooded conditions, as the usual SRI process goes. And then at 9 days or 10 days after transplantation, the beans were sown in between the rows, and as you can see, growth after a few days, and finally the growth of beans together with the rice towards the end of the season. Yeah, the method or the pattern of intercropping was optimized with the idea that the beans or the plant's nitrogen fixing legumes would contribute to nitrogen delivery to the surrounding 4 plants, and this is the pattern, this is the scheme we employed for the intercropping. So to maximize basically the contribution of the legumes to the surrounding plants. And these are the results from the field level experiments. The SRI-BI means System of Rice Intensification with Beans Intercropping. The graphs were created with this nomenclature. That's why I'm writing this here as well. So as you can see, the maximum height observed in case of in this experiment, in this round of experiments, was highest in SRI with beans intercropping, much higher than normal SRI, and in this case, the maximum height. This is not the mean height, but the maximum height, just for just to have an impression how high the beans intercropped rice could go. In the image, you could see a visual depiction of the difference. The person there has this intercropped rice field in his left hand, and the normal SRI field in his right hand, and so you can see the difference in the heights in case of this intervention. Then the tiller number in case of SRI with beans intercropping, the average tiller number was 34, while as it was 30 in case of SRI without intercropping, and it was much less, 12 in case of the conventional flooded rice. And in the previous year, the difference was even much higher, with the intercropped SRI having average tiller number of 26 and the conventional flooded rice having a tiller number average of 9.5. With respect to yield length, with respect to yield parameters, panicle length in the first round of experiments was almost in the same range for all the 3 treatments, but in the second round of experiments, there was a significant difference between SRI with bean intercropping, comparing it with the conventional flooded rice, and also some difference compared to the normal SRI. Similar trend was also observed in the spikelet number per panicle, another parameter that was measured in the experiments, and the final rice yield, which is what basically the farmers in the region are interested about, showed a significant difference from the conventional rice methodology, with the SRI intercropping showing a yield of 3.7 tons per hectare compared to conventional 3.1 in the first year. And in the second year, it showed 4.6 tons per hectare compared to the conventional yieldage of 3.2 tons per hectare. Furthermore, in the region, the rice straw itself also has use. It's used as a packing material in food packaging, in the local food packaging. So it's also one of the important outcomes of agricultural activity, rice farming activity. And obviously, SRI has a higher number of tillers, so higher biomass generation. And for comparison, the SRI with beans intercropping had almost double the number of biomass or fodder units per unit of land, which was observed. But all these parameters are usually part of the normal studies comparing SRI and conventional flooded rice, but the weed management part was something that we observed, what was not previously discussed in other studies. So the comparison here is between the normal SRI, SRIW, W as in VD control, that is the weeds were allowed to grow on that plot, and the SRI with beans intercropping. So in the VD control plot, you had 56 weeds per square meter, while as sorry, the other way around. In the SRI with beans intercropping, you had around 56 weed units per square meter, while as in the SRI weed control, VD control, it was almost 4 times the higher number of weeds. Similar trend was observed also in the next year, where the weed infestation was much higher, almost 3.5 times than compared to the beans intercropping. So one of the significant insights gained during these trials was that beans intercropping provides or beans intercropping is an efficient means of weed control that can be used in under SRI management to save time, to save labor cost, or to save even the money required to conduct the weeding. This is a graphic or pictorial representation of the weed infestation. This one on the left side on the screen, you have the SRI plot with the VD control, like the weeds were allowed to grow on this plot. And down the right side of the screen, you have the SRI with beans intercropping, where obviously the beans somehow fended off the weeds and there was less weed infestation. Similar trend was observed in the next year. This one being on the left side of the screen, you have the VD control, and on the right side of the screen, you have the SRI plots with beans intercropped. Yeah, another insight gained during the trials was regarding a local aromatic landrace called mushkbudush, and it was it's usually prone to infestation by certain diseases, but in case of SRI, the disease incidence was found to be much lesser, owing to the wider spacing between the SRI plants. The overall increase or improvement in earnings of the farmers was close to 60% in SRI with beans intercropping compared to the conventional flooded rice. But if local compost facilities or compost production facilities are in place, then this net increase in the income, net increase in the earnings could be even more increased. Yes, so broadly the conclusions we would draw was obviously the water saving part, but also that SRI has or gives much more room for trying more innovations owing to the alternate wetting and drying. And this also included the possibility of conducting intercropping, which was observed to be a successful intervention. Yes, so on a broader level, you only water use was less. There was better resilience in terms of disease incidents, less weeds, better nutrient uptake, higher rice yield, higher fodder yield. The input cost was a bit higher, and which I mentioned, if there are if farmers are encouraged or supported with local compost production facilities, then this would also be in their range. Yes, I think, thank you. I think we are right in the time. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion later on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
Over to you,
very
Aisha.
much. Yeah, thank you very much, Tavseef. I'm very glad that you were really very, very much on time, which will provide us with some extra minutes in our discussion as we hope to wrap up the seminar, the webinar in through 1.5 hours. So now we are like almost 7 minutes from your time. So it's very interesting to see that the SRI plus intercropping provides a better option. It provides us with the ability to introduce or engage innovations together with the SRI. And we all know that the SRI method is a very sustainable approach to producing rice, where there is less inputs of chemicals, more adoption of organic inputs, as well as having the benefits of getting higher yields. So having SRI together with another agroecological approach of intercropping even gives more sustainability in terms of the SRI alone. So thank you very much, Tavseef. I would like to call on the next speaker, Francesco, so that when Francesco takes his presentation, we can now combine the two sessions for Q&A and some comments for those that have some live experiences with the SRI practices. So Francesco, I hand over to you. It's exactly, by my time, is 2:30. In the United States, it's 9:30. So I'll give you the time to take your presentation, and hopefully you finish in 30 minutes. So over to you, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Aisha, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thanks for the introduction you did, Aisha. And I want to say it's an honor to talk about a topic that I'm so passionate about. And it's also an honor to talk after Dr. Tavseef, whose work on intercropping with SRI caught my interest since the very beginning of my experience with the system of rice intensification. So today's presentation is based on a paper that I had the opportunity to publish with experts like Professor Norman Apples, that we all know as the father of SRI for the past 30 years, Professor Amir Kassam, who has been promoting CA also for the past 30 years, and his colleague, Dr. Frederick, a great expert of CA as well. And also Dr. Adam Parr, who is the head of SRI 2030, the organization I work for, who supported me during the entire process of working on this publication. Again, it has been really an honor to work with them on this topic. So intercropping, we know it's a common practice of CA, but this presentation will focus on the integration of all aspects of conservation agriculture, CA, with SRI practices. So just to give you an idea of what this will be, the presentation will be structured as follows. There will be a very brief reminder of why rice is globally relevant and what are the main rice ecosystems, a very brief introduction of SRI and an introduction of conservation agriculture, an analysis of the commonalities and differences between CA and SRI, and then a reflection on why it is relevant to consider a merger between these two agroecological practices. Following this, I will give you a couple of concrete examples of CA plus SRI to give you an idea of what it looks like in the field. And then I will present three synergistic interactions between the principle of SRI and the principle of CA. Finally, I will give an overview of where this is happening around the world and conclude with a brief analysis of the main challenges and opportunities connected with the adoption of a combination of CA and SRI. So let's start with why rice. Really, not much time on this, as we are all aware of the key role of rice. But I just want to highlight that the livelihoods of around 1 billion people depend on rice production. So we better find the best way to grow rice that benefits both farmers and the environment. I will again let you just have a look at the slide and remind the importance for climate change and food security at the global level. Then I will now briefly introduce the main rice ecosystems. And again, I will not spend too much time on this because we all know them, or most of us know them. But I think it's relevant to say that the combination of conservation agriculture and SRI is feasible in irrigated ecosystems, as well as in both rain-fed lowland and rain-fed upland system. Ultimately, having the potential to be adopted on around 93% of the rice harvested area, which accounts for 99% of global rice production. So now, let's pass on what SRI and CA are. SRI, as we are all aware of, I will not go through it much. I will not present the principle and so on, but I just want to highlight that this is a crop, water, and soil management strategy that is inherently flexible. It's inclusive of any agroecological approach that aligns with its principles. From, as we've seen, the introduction of components such as intercropping, to the use of trichoderma, as I know the organizer of this event are focusing on, to actually the integration with a farm management system like conservation agriculture. So it is also important then to remember that we still have a long way to go to make SRI mainstream, because today we estimate that there are around 9 million hectares under SRI management, which is roughly 4% of the global rice cultivation. So now let's pass on what conservation agriculture is. Conservation agriculture, also known as CA, is a land and farm management system that represents the cornerstone of all sustainable agricultural approach. This is because the 3 pillars of CA, also known as the 3 principles, as you prefer, replicate what happens in natural environment, where the soil is not disturbed by any human practices like tillage, where the soil is covered by a permanent layer of biomass that protect the soil surface from direct sunlight and from erosion, and where also a multitude of species coexist and interact with each other. So today we hear many definitions of what sustainable agriculture is, such as regenerative agriculture, agroecology, permaculture, climate-smart agriculture, and so on. And while these names, these approaches often prioritize different aspects, they all have in common the 3 basic principles of CA, because these have the potential to increase the delivery of ecosystem services, especially when adopted at the landscape level. So CA, in fact, is already a global phenomenon, and its adoption keeps increasing every year by around 10 million hectares every year. However, the adoption of CA is not strong in rice-based farming systems because of the challenges presented by the incompatibility of CA principles that you see here on the left of the slide with the conventional methods for rice farming. So the opportunity is here to merge CA and SRI, and it's relevant because it can help expanding both systems by leveraging their commonalities that I'm now going to present. So now let's see how CA and SRI interact with each other. So this table is taken from the paper published on the Agronomy Journal. And well, for this sake of time efficiency, I will really not go through all of the principles and practices, but I will then share the link in the chat for you to access the free access paper in case you want to look more into it. But now let's start with saying that the distinction between CA, SRI, and conventional practices for wetland rice in this table is done by labeling each practice as essential, compatible, possible, or excluded. So starting with the land and soil management, we saw in the previous slide that the avoidance of soil disturbance, so avoiding tillage, is an essential principle of CA, as you can see here, and is translated into the practice of no-till. So this is not really a component of SRI per se, but it is possible to integrate no-till in an SRI system. Then doing this, so no-till on raised bed, is again possible with SRI and is compatible with CA, as you can see. Looking at enhancing soil fertility, we know that the addition of organic matter is an essential principle for both SRI and CA, while growing cover crops is essential for CA and is possible under SRI, but is not one of the principles of SRI. Same for keeping a permanent layer of mulch. It is possible. It is possible here with SRI, while it is an essential part under CA. Now, going on the crop establishment side of things, direct seeding, that you can see here, we know is possible with SRI because it aligns with the principle of establishing young and healthy plants, and is also very compatible with CA. Actually, most CA systems are done with direct seeding. However, transplanting young seedlings, which is essential under SRI, is possible under CA. Moving into spacing, again, we all know that this is an essential part of SRI, and it is compatible with CA. Actually, as we will see later, it makes better use of the improved soil condition achieved under CA management. Then moving into water and nutrient management here, we can see well how CA and SRI are really aligned regarding these two aspects, water management and nutrient management. However, the only practice that create a conflict between CA and SRI is the use of soil engaging mechanical weeders under SRI systems. So using weeders is not one of the principles of SRI, but is done almost all the time. All the time farmers adopt SRI. So for this reason, since this goes against the practice and the principle of CA of avoiding soil disturbance, when we want to merge SRI and CA, this practice of SRI should be dropped, and alternative ways of weed management should be adopted. One was actually just presented by Dr. Tavseef, the possibility of using intercropping with SRI rice to reduce weed pressures. So I will stop here with this table. As I said, I will make it available to all of you afterwards. And now I will pass on why we should consider aligning SRI practices with the practices of CA. So SRI generally allows for the conventional soil preparations done with paddy fields, which is paddling, which is even worse than just tilling the soil, because this results in extremely degrading soil biological, physical, chemical, and hydrological properties, as well as reducing its aeration and drainage. Also, given the nature of rice farming in general, the SRI approach does not really explicitly include soil cover or crop diversification. So there is an opportunity to combine the principle of SRI with the three pillars of CA for a more sustainable rice production, then bring a step forward the already very efficient SRI approach. So briefly, to avoid the need for powdering the fields before transplanting, dry DSR here is a method that is allowing for healthy plant establishment aligned with the principle of CA of non-tilled soil. Then to avoid bare soil and the connected erosion, it should be considered adding a layer of permanent biomass in rice fields, and this is feasible on the non-permanently flooded condition promoted by SRI, and combines well with the CA practices of cover crops and residue retention. Again, to address the problem of rice monoculture, so the limited species diversities in paddies, in the non-flooded fields under aerobic condition, intercropping becomes feasible, as we just seen from Tavseef experiments. And the spacing of SRI enable these intercropping practices. So the opportunity to integrate CA components with SRI actually is also presented in training manuals, and especially in very high quality training manuals prepared specifically for Western Africa. This possibility to combine CA and SRI is highlighted as an opportunity to address the problem connected with soil fertility, and also to optimize the effect of SRI. So as we are about to see, the merging of CA and SRI can work also in wetland rice areas, because this is more straightforward in upland rice, but this is possible also in wetland rice. So I took two examples where CA and SRI are combined in wetland rice conditions. And here is the first. This is an example of CA plus SRI implemented on raised beds. And this is a scheme that I prepared from the measurement that I was given by the father of the PQNK, pronounced as picnic, a methodology developed in the Punjab region of Pakistan. So over there, rice and other crops are cultivated on permanent raised beds. Irrigation is provided through the furrows, and crop residues are retained on the beds, while rice plants are directly seeded following SRI spacing. Sorry. In this case, the spacing is 25 by 25. So the results here are yields increasing up to 12 tons an hectare. Let's consider that this is already a quite fertile area, but still 12 tons an hectare is much higher sorry, again, than the local average. This method sorry, these methods combine CA and SRI.
Francesco, just take your time. We are not rushing. Just take your time. Then you can continue. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's be fine. I have a bit
Stable.
of a
All right. All right. Thank you.
So in this case, CA and SRI are implemented without the use of any chemical inputs. And there is a variety of crop that is used on this specific PQNK system, and also in combination with rows of trees sometimes. In the next slide, actually, there are some pictures and a short videos. So here on the top, you can see the machine that you use to create the beds. And in this case, it creates beds in between rows of orange trees. On top of these beds, any crops can be grown, and also rice. Then there are a couple of pictures that show how the system promotes crop diversity and how biomass mulching is used. Then here I have a brief video of rice under EQ&K system. And you can see how it looks well, how you see the furrows between each bed. And in this case, biomass mulch on the bed is absent because it's on the farmer to decide what practice to uptake. So next is an example of CA and SRI in the US. More precisely, here is a scheme of CA and SRI implemented by a farmer in Arkansas. This system is quite similar to the one of Pakistan, but the measure of beds and the furrows are different. So you can see how the beds are narrower. There are only 2 lines of plants, while the furrows are 60 centimeters wide. Also, the spacing between plants is different. Here is 40 by 20 centimeters. And in this specific case, some large-scale standard machinery for rice seeding has been customized to fit the required spacing. The result is a consistent drop in the number of seeds and therefore cutting the costs. Sorry again. Yeah, I apologize for my cough. So in this case, the yield remained the same as the yield of conventional farmers in the area, but profit increased because the use of seeds dropped from 28 kg an hectare to 6.5 kg an hectare. So the profit really consistently increased. Also, the farmer communicated that by cultivating rice on raised beds, now he can actually farm rice on areas that wouldn't otherwise support this crop. So he can extend his rice cultivation. So now that we got an idea of what CA plus SRI can look like, at least on raised beds, let's see what are the synergies occurring when merging these 2 systems. So first, let's look at the effect on yield and on plant resilience, 2 very important factors. So we know that CA practices such as keeping permanent mulch, avoiding soil disturbance, and increased diversification have positive effects on soil properties and on soil fertility. So combining this with the reduced plant density promoted by SRI means that each plant is left with more space to grow extensive root system and extensive canopies, and can make the best use of the increased soil fertility resulting from CA's type of management. And ultimately, productive tillers are formed and stronger plants. So the combination of SRI and CA here is quite straightforward in the way that it can promote synergies that result in increased yield and increased plant resilience. Secondly, I want to focus on weed pressure, which we know is a challenge in both CA and SRI systems. So let's see if their combination actually has a potential to address this. So again, the effect of CA on weed pressure are that permanent soil coverage and no-till respectively reduce weed emergence and lower the weed seed bank. At the same time, as Tavseef described, the reduced plant density promoted by SRI allows for intercropping which, as we have seen, reduce the space for weed infestations. So these effects build on each other, and they result in reducing weed pressures. Of course, with stuff like no-till that reduce the weed seed banks, this is something that happens year after year. So this is something that the results will be shown in their best way after a few years that no-till is practiced. Last but not least, the combination of CA and SRI principle results in better use of water resources. In fact, SRI water management system, known as alternate wetting and drying, or AWD in irrigation system, and resulting from the use of water collection and water drainage infrastructures in rain-fed conditions, these inherently produce the amount of water. So farmers reduce drastically the amount of water that they need to produce rice when they adopt SRI. So now, by combining these with CA practices that reduce evaporations, such as having a permanent layer of biomass mulch, and increase water retention, such as promoting no-till that improves soil structures and therefore improve the water retention, make so that SRI farmers need even less water to grow their rice. So now that we have seen these three important synergistic effects of combining SRI and CA, place. So here, I want to highlight that although it's still a niche, the combination of SRI and CA, this is already a reality in various areas of the world, and also a different type of farming system, from large to medium to small scale. So starting from the top left, we have the US, the example I gave before. Here is a very large scale system with huge machineries. And then we have seen how they implement CA plus SRI on raised beds. Then we have the example of Pakistan that we have also seen. This is done mostly on medium-scale farms, but is quite well developed. So the picnic system has been disseminated among thousands of farmers and is very successful. As I said here, SRI plus CA is practiced completely organically. Then we have the example of China and Vietnam, where research institutions did some experiments on the combination of CA plus SRI. Here I want to highlight that in the case of China, in the Sichuan Academy, they used plastic sheets instead of biomass mulch cover. So this was very effective in improving water retention and in keeping the temperature of soil constant, but still is not something that we, as SRI 2030, we will support because of the problem of plastic pollution that will result from a widespread use of these. And we don't want rural areas to be filled with plastic sheets. In the case of Vietnam, rice and potatoes were cultivated in rotation following a CA plus SRI approach. Then we have the example in India, where the Saguna Rural Foundation developed what they call Saguna rice technique, which promote CA plus SRI, again, on top of raised beds. But in this case, they use glyphosate for weed management. Again, not something that we would promote ourselves. Then we have the Aga Khan Foundation that promotes a combination of SRI and CA together with permaculture principles. So they call this system the Zanatani rice permaculture systems. And this is used only with self-produced organic inputs. So the Aga Khan Foundation is promoting this in Madagascar, Mozambique, India, Kenya, and Tanzania. So now I think we got an idea of where this is happening, or at least the places that I could track during my research, because as I said, there are very good training manuals that promote the integration of CA and SRI in the context of West Africa. So we don't exclude that this is also implemented in other areas. And now that we've seen where this is happening, I want to proceed with summarizing the benefits and the challenges connected with the adoption of CA plus SRI. So this is my last slide. And as you can imagine, the main challenges connected to the difficulty to transition are connected actually to the difficulty to transition toward such a different way of growing rice compared to conventional rice practices. So here, the challenge is the initial effort requested to work out the best practices in relation to a given context. So we know that SRI is a knowledge-intensive system. SRI plus CA is as well a knowledge-intensive system. So it only pays off when it is well formulated, and the benefits are seen when you realize that the better management of resources can actually substitute the intensive use of expensive inputs. But again, this needs to be contextualized. So if implemented on raised beds, as by the example we have seen, CA plus SRI is initially labor intensive, and without appropriate mechanization, it is quite difficult to be implemented. However, once appropriately adapted, CA plus SRI reduce the labor inputs, especially in raised beds, because these are permanent. Once they are done, they are there. They enhance soil health, they enhance yields, improve resilience, and also further increase the input use efficiencies, ultimately increase profit for farmers, and also having beneficial externalities such as methane mitigation and carbon sequestrations. So we stop here with today's presentation. I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope you found this insightful, and I'm very happy to answer any question you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francesco. I'm very glad that you actually finished on time. And I want to quickly run through the presentations before we take some comments or questions from our audience. Tavseef gave us a system of rice intensification, which integrates sustainability by including intercropping with legume, which is beans, which is supposed to enhance the nutrient cycling of the soil, as well as provides an agroecological sustainable manner of keeping the increasing biodiversity and healthier soils. He showed us how there was reduced weed pressures in terms of with the intercropping of rice. And at the end of the day, we also saw that there was an increase in income for the farmer that practices the intercropping. So these are so many benefits economically and ecologically beneficial for farmers in their different cropping systems. And I'm very excited to have listened to Tavseef, because all that we hear or we read are actually substantiated with facts and with experiments, because he presented results in greenhouse experiments as well as the fields, and specific to systems of rice production in the Kashmir region. The second speaker, Francesco, gave us a highlight on how CA, conservation agriculture, can be combined with SRI. So knowing SRI as a sustainable practice, what are those things that, or what are those practices that we can put in place to further enhance the sustainability of the system and increase resilience and improve the carbon sequestration, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as provide water saving technique or water saving in the producing rice. So for a lot of us here, they are quite new concepts and quite somehow technical concepts. But I'm also glad that at the end of the day, in Francesco's presentation, he showed regions where these practices are being done and shows that it is possible to be replicated in other regions, especially when you understand your soils, you understand that it can be done. And then he went further to say there are training manuals. So we are all glad to be here. I'm sure the organizers will share links of the different places, or if there are publications that we can put our hands to in terms of these training manuals, so that we can replicate some of these practices in our own regions and in our own specific systems, and make it expand the scope of these practices as a way of mitigating climate change. So thank you very much, the two speakers, Tavseef, Francesca. I'm very glad that I'm here to moderate and also listen to you, as well as with others. There are links to some of this on the chat, and I would like to open the floor for questions and comments. Some comments can be dropped, questions can be dropped in the chat box. But if you have a question, you can raise your hand and I can give you the floor to ask your question directly to the speakers. And if there are no specific questions, I can see which one fits which speaker and direct the question to that. So the floor is open for comments, for questions, and for contributions. You can raise your hand. Yeah, okay. So the organizers, the admin can unmute or permit a speaker to unmute. I have Nazir Musa Ahmed, who has a question. Nazir, can you unmute yourself and quickly put in your question? Nazir Musa.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I hope I'm audible enough. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yeah, I'm not, you are not very audible, Nazir. You are not very audible.
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I just have 2 or 3 questions and also need more clarification from the first presenter. In the course of his presentation, the first presenter highlighted that the income from the paddy sale is less than that of the store. I would like more explanation about that so that it will suit our specific region, because normally in Nigeria here, it's look impossible for the income from the sale of paddy to be less than that of the store. That is the first question. Also, I would like to ask the first presenter again if he was able to identify specifically the wheat population, the kind of wheats that were controlled during the research. Also, for the second presenter, in Nigeria, we have been practicing SRI, of course. I lead the project that aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emission. That's the SRI for almost 3 years now. And there are 3 major challenges we are facing. That is the transplanting, which is highly laborious. And because we normally transplant the seedling early, it could not be possible to do it mechanically. And also the weed control. Most of our farmers here in Nigeria, they use flooding method to control the weed. So whenever we ask them to follow alternate wetting and drying, weeds become the major concern and problem. And lastly, the water management during wet season is also something difficult for them. So I would like to ask the second presenter if there is any advice he can give us so that to advocate the system effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nazir. Tavseef, can you quickly answer his first two questions? he talked about the income from the paddy and the fodder or the straw. Of course, we have different systems. In some of our places, the paddy is more important. It gives more income than the straw. With typical of Nigeria, sometimes the straw is even not used for anything. But recently, it's been utilized for composting and for other alternative uses. So that's why he's asking for the income. And then the second one is the weed. Can you say about the profile of the weed or the diversity of which type of weed you see in your system? And then Francesco is on the management of water. Yeah. So Tavseef.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, the second question, no, we did not identify the weeds. It was basically the common weeds that are found in the agricultural farms there. We did not identify which species or subspecies they were. So that's a short answer to that question. As to the first question, the fodder or this grass that is used as a packaging material, its prices really fluctuate, and it depends on a particular season. When it's in high demand, then the prices really go up. The range is huge. It ranges from, say, 100 to 800 Indian rupees per unit, small unit of this grass. So that is why it is also an important revenue stream for the farmers in that case. And based on the mathematics, it just showed that they were the higher number of these fodder units or these grass units that were that resulted from the SRI trials because of the higher biomass growth, and as a result, the revenue from that stream was higher. I mean, it's not that rice is not important. It's just that rice is, of course, the main motivation. The food, the staple food is rice, so that's the main motivation. But it's just that this fodder, this grass, straw is also important, and yes, as a result of higher biomass yield, the income numbers also got higher. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Francesco, can you quickly answer the question in terms of the challenges in the SRI in terms of transplanting, the labor, and weed control, because some farmers actually use the flooding to suppress the weed growth, and also the challenges of water management during the wet season. Transplanting, of course, is laborious. It's normally done manually, and it's difficult to transplant very young seedlings with mechanically. So can you also say something like that? Something
Sure.
about that?
Yes, I'll try to address this very challenging question, because it's very true that these are some of the main challenges in the adoption of SRI. So regarding to plant establishment, direct seeding could be an answer, where it's possible to directly seeding rice instead of transplanting young seedlings. You take out the problem of handling young seedlings, and you keep you keep respecting the principle of SRI of early and healthy plant establishment. Of course, when done mechanically, then much easier. So having a direct seeder that you can adapt to following the SRI distance, that will be quite useful to do it on a larger scale. So this mechanization exists, it's not yet widespread. So then we have a problem on having the right mechanization to adopt direct seeding to to overcome the challenging of transplanting. And regarding water management, I understand that the question is, the problem with SRI water management is the increased weed pressures. So normally under SRI, what happens is that farmers weed using a push weeder or a cone weeder. There are different forms of small-scale mechanization developed to manage weeds mechanically. When you want to integrate SRI with CA, then you have additional options that are, for example, what Tavseef presented in his studies. So doing intercropping actually reduce weed pressure. And then, as I mentioned, when you have a covered soil, so you have a organic mulch on top of the bare soil, weeds have, it's more difficult for weeds to emerge. So again, that lower weed pressure. And at the same time, when you have no-till for consecutive seasons, the seed banks of weeds is reduced because the seeds are not ready to get out of the soil anymore if they're not brought on the surface every time that you till the soil. So that again, in the longer term, has a positive effect on reducing weed pressures. Now, it's, as I was saying, it's on the farmer to find the best way to adopt these practices, either on raised beds in lowland condition or in highland condition, upland condition. It's a bit easier to mulch and to practice DSR and to practice no-till as well.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Francesco. I have a hand. I have two hands, I think. There is Wayan Wangia, and the next person is Aisha Abubakar Mukhtar. So I will take from Wayan, and then we'll take from Aisha. Yes, okay. Wayan, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks, Aisha. I have a question to Tavseef. Yeah, because I saw the leaf of the bean a bit yellow. How long they grow together, both bean and rice? Because I want to see about the nitrogen fixations in the beans. And for Francesco, I've done some research on growing rice on the rice bed in intercropping with legumes. But as you said, weeds infestation is very intensive. And then I had also an experiment using mulching and involving the application of mycorrhiza, and it's really significant to increase rice yield compared to conventional ones. About we call it as a aerobic irrigation system. Is it we don't also do tillage on the bed. And I've done experiment for 3 years without tillage. Is it also a type of conservation agriculture? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Here in Indonesia, our farmer is not successful in doing SRI for long times because they complain about weeds. That's yeah. And my invention for growing rice on the rice bed in intercropping with legumes also had some difficulties because in many areas we have rats to attack the rice. That's our problems. Okay, I just want to have some comments from both of you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thanks,
Thank you
Aisha.
very much. Thank you very much, Wayan. Of course, we know that a lot of practices are context specific, and they are also depend on the systems that that and many of us operate differently. So it's possible what works in one place or in one region may not be exactly what will work there, but there may be a way to see what two combinations or what um, two agroecological methods you can put in one place. So they are all everything is not a silver bullet, like but it depends on the specific locations. It depends on the soils. It depends on so many things, and you can see there are issues of maybe rodents. So it's also a context specific. So I would like Tavseef to quickly answer the question that what type of period the beans is together with the rice, and the Francesco would also say something if he can. Tavseef.
Yeah, that's a very sharp observation, Ryan. So, like I mentioned, the beans were sown at 10 days after transplantation of the rice seedlings, and then they were allowed to grow till basically ripening. And that was, I think, the picture that I showed is at 12 weeks after after putting the seeds of the beans into the rows.
Any flooding for the rice? Because as the old technique of SRI, there will be very thin flooding after flowering.
Mm-hmm.
Did you apply flooding?
No, flooding was not applied as a as a. It was always watering the field and then letting it get dry. Flooding was not practiced, but it is possible that because it is the whole field, all the neighbors are doing the flooded rice, and then there's one field at the edge that's doing this SRI. It is possible at some point maybe there was flooding, but as an intention, it was not part of the plan.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very
Because
much.
when you apply flooding, because nitrogen will not be able to enter the soil for fixation. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Do you want to say something, Francesco?
Yeah. Well, I think the question I heard is, am I doing SCA plus SRI? Because I understand that Wayan is already practicing SRI on top of raised beds, with some part of this done with mulching and with no-till. So I think yes, you're doing SCA plus SRI.
We use direct seeding on the bed.
Yeah, I would say with intercropping as well. So there are all the three principles of CA, of crop diversification, avoiding soil disturbance, and keeping the soil covered. So yes, you're doing. I should have probably included you in the map I showed in the last slide. So I would be very happy to maybe afterwards have a conversation on how, what are the challenges and how this work in your context.
Yeah, thank you very much, Francesco. Let's quickly have Aisha Abubakar Mukhtar. We are almost rounding up so that we can conclude the webinar. Aisha, you can unmute your mic and ask your question. Aisha, are you with us? Yeah.
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, all, and thank you for a good for the good presentations. Mine is just two simple and quick questions. I didn't quite get the type of beans you actually cultivated. What variety is it? Although I must say that beans is actually a good candidate for SRI because it's as a legume, it is to some extent and drought tolerant. And so for those spells when you have to interchange the flooding and drying, alternate wetting and drying is good for that system. So I didn't quite get what variety of beans you used. That is one. Then the next question is, what after the trial in 2020, did you advocate for this method, this combine the SRI, BI, for it to be done in other places, or did you observe if this technique or this technology is adopted by people in that area? To see, the reason why I'm asking is to find out if there's any possibility of scaling this technology so that more farms, more lands, more soils can benefit from this technology. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Aisha.
Okay.
I think Tavseef, you can answer directly.
Yeah. Yes. So the beans we used was the common red kidney bean, Phaseolus vulgaris. That is basically the legume that is commonly also used in Kashmir, and that's why we also decided for that. With regards to continuing the adoption of beans intercropping with SRI, we did continue it for one more year after the studies were concluded, but afterwards, basically farmers really need some incentive to do something that's not normal. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it's usually a farmer that is at the edge, or basically everyone else is doing something. They are using the chemicals, they're using flooding, but then this farmer who is working with us, they have to do something out of the ordinary. So unless there is some incentive, there is some support system for them, they usually do not carry on with the adoption. But I think we had contact with Francesco a couple of years ago, and it was a welcome development that there's this organization. They have SRI 2030 who are now basically working on expanding SRI implementation in different regions of the world, as he presented in his presentation. So I think there are organizations that are working in dissemination of SRI related knowledge and also implementation, but I personally I was not able to, or the farmers, they were not able to carry through in the subsequent years. But I completely agree that it has to be at a larger scale to really see the benefits for the society.
Yes, thank you very much, Tavseef. And thank you very much, Aisha. I think why the question came is because if it has been proven to be a good practice with all the accompanied advantages, it should be something that should be advocated for further, and that should have started from the region or the area, the place where the work has been done. But I know that there are difficulties with adoption, because there are difficulties with adoption. I have some questions in the chat. Excuse me, I will get to you, please. I have some questions in the chat. One is that there's a publication by Wayan that you can see about the raising of the rice crop on raised beds, intercropping with legume. And then there is also a question of Alvary, who asks whether there can be integration of other crops in SRI aside only the legumes, and the interest of some groups that are advocating for the intercropping with cassava. He's asking if it is possible. So I can just quickly say that if there is a diversification if cassava is used, and it depends. The routing systems can be looked at. If the cassava and the rice are having the same routing systems, there will be a lot of competition for take-up of nitrogen rather than incorporating nitrogen. But it depends on the physiology of cassava. If it has some mycorrhizal association or some beneficial microbes that are around the rhizosphere that can maintain the ecological or health of the soil, ecological functioning. But then we all know that intercropping is very good with legume because of the importance of the legume in the fixation of atmospheric nitrogen to the soil. So I think that that would be a very a tricky one. And as researchers, we always continue to explore, to practice and explore all these methods. So I can say I leave it to research to see if there can be an integration with cassava or other crops to get the benefit, other crops aside legumes. But we mostly advocate for incorporation of legumes for a sustainable system. So we have 2 minutes to the end of the program. I just want to quickly say 1 or 2 things. I want to sincerely thank you all, the presenters, Tavseef and Francesco, for the very informative in discussion and presentations that you gave today. Thank you very much. For all the listeners that are with us, the audience, I like to also appreciate you because you also helped in strengthening the discussion. Before we finally go, I want to say that we will want people that have people to put their cameras on so that we can take pictures. But on a final note is that there is also a form that you are supposed to fill, I think, on the chat box. Yeah, to take a moment to complete the form for your participation certificate. So we can also take some time to do that before we close, and we can also take some screenshots. So you can all keep your cameras on while the administrators take our photos. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So Didat, have you taken the picture? Didat.
Irfan is taking the photo.
Is it Irfan? Oh, Irfan. Okay. Elijah, I cannot see your picture. Elijah. Thank you very much. Egalechu. 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 Tusnol, your pictures. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. So, Irfan, do you have everyone? Aisha Mukhtar. Irfan.
Yes.
Are we okay?
Yes. I'm going
Thank
to
you.
take a screenshot for the first slide. Okay.
Oh,
1,
okay.
2,
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Okay. For the next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Irfan. Thank you very much for your active participation and for putting on your camera. So please fill out the form. Fill out the form before we close. For some of us that are here are very strong advocates for SRI. I am one because I have practiced SRI, and there are some couple of my my colleagues, my students that have practiced SRI, and they have seen the importance, the benefits. What is left for us as a scientist is also to see how to incorporate the ecological aspects more of the intercropping and the CA aspect. I think it's also an eye-opener for me to see how. Of course, we cannot take all the components together. Like there are some trade-offs if you are to use the CA in and planting with direct seeding, then direct seeding is not one of the SRI principles, but then we can advocate for direct seeding and leaving a minimum of 1 or 2 seedling in a hill and at a 20 by 20 or 25 by 25 centimeter spacing. So all these are context specific, and there have to be some adjustments to what can be fully adopted. So thank you very much. In that regard, do you have all the forms, Irfan? We want to close now. It's already 3 minutes after the closing time. So I just wish to urge you all to fill the form that the link has been given there, so that you'll be able to get their certificates of participation. So thank you very much. In that regard, I would like to say goodbye and thank you all for being here. So for some of you, I wish you a nice evening. For some of us here is good afternoon or nice day ahead. So thank you and have a pleasant day. Bye.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you semuanya.
Okay,
Have a nice
thank
day.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, ini Mas Febri ya.
Ya, sama-sama. Terima kasih semuanya.
Okay.
Bye, Bidat. February, bye.
Bye-bye, Aisha.
Bye-bye.